She left her wedding ring on the coffee table. Not on the nightstand. Not in a drawer. On the coffee table, like some casual decoration between the remote and the candle she never lights. That was at 7:14 p.m. By 7:22 p.m., her suitcase was in the back of her friend Harper's car, and she didn't even glance back. She just said, "I'm just taking some time for myself," then closed the door like she wasn't walking away from a 10-year marriage. 8 hours later, she sent me a text. "I'll be back on Monday. I'll explain everything later," smiley face. That smiley face was the worst part. Like she thought she was doing me a favor. Like I was supposed to be sitting here, grateful for crumbs of her attention, just waiting for her to bless me with an explanation. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Good. My lawyer loves stories. Then I turned off my phone. She used to say I was too emotional. "Wes, you overthink everything," she'd sigh whenever I asked where she was going. "Wes, it's not that deep. Wes, please stop acting like a puppy that's been left outside." Well, the puppy finally bit back. Because I know where she is. Or at least, I know where she isn't. She's not at the lakeside cabin with just the girls. That part was obvious the moment Harper messaged me asking if I could water her plants, from Nashville. So unless Harper figured out how to teleport from Tennessee to Minnesota, my wife lied. Again, I've been collecting lies for the past 4 weeks. I'm working late. My battery died. That charge on the card must be an error. You must have dreamed that. I never said that. I love you, Wes. All lies. Every one of them carefully wrapped in that sweet, calm voice of hers. She was always so calm, even when she was caught. Like she rehearsed it. Do you want to know what I did after she left? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't drink. I vacuumed. I vacuumed the living room. Moved the furniture like she always asked me to. Scrubbed the baseboards. I even washed the curtains. Why? Because I needed to do something that made me feel like I still had control over at least one corner of this life she was unraveling. Then I sat on the clean floor, with the vacuum still humming behind me, and stared at her wedding ring. The same ring I bought on credit. The one I had engraved with, "Still you," even after the storms. I thought that was romantic. Now it just feels stupid. I turned my phone back on this morning. 37 missed calls. 12 voicemails. For texts. "Wes, can you please answer me? I think you misunderstood. This isn't what you think. Please don't do anything crazy." Crazy? You mean like responding with legal representation instead of desperation? I told her once, years ago, if she ever planned to betray me, she better hope I never stay silent. Because silence, for me, isn't defeat, it's preparation. And now I'm prepared. She comes back Monday. She'll find the locks changed. And the ring? I flushed it. By Saturday night, she had gone completely quiet. Not a single call since the last, "Please don't do anything crazy." That silence. It didn't scare me. It confirmed everything I suspected. But I wasn't just sitting at home waiting for her ghost to show up on Monday like she promised. No, I spent that weekend becoming someone I didn't even recognize. I started with her laptop. Yes, I opened it. Spare me the lectures about trust. When someone walks out on you with a vague text and a smiley face, all bets are off. And no, she didn't lock it. Tessa always said passwords were paranoia between partners. Irony, right? The first thing I noticed? The browser history was wiped clean. But she wasn't thorough. Her email was still logged in. And the deeper I went, the more rotten it got. There were 3 hotel confirmations in the past month. None of them were in the cities she said she was traveling to. And all of them were for 2 guests. One of the reservations even had a little note to the front desk. "Please make sure the champagne is chilled before arrival. We're celebrating something big," smiley face. Celebrating what, Tessa? I dug further. A folder labeled "Personal, Do Not Delete" sat quietly on her desktop like a loaded gun. Inside, screenshots, photos, booked Airbnb stays under a fake Gmail alias I didn't recognize. But that wasn't the worst part. There were selfies, her, smiling in robes, holding glasses of wine. Not scandalous, but the reflection in the glass windows behind her. A man's silhouette. Same guy. Every single time. She never mentioned him once. But he was in the background of more than a dozen pictures, like a ghost that only I could see now. He even had a name on one receipt. Emerson P. She used his corporate card for dinner one night in August. A corporate card that wasn't ours. I sat back in the chair, shaking. Not from anger. From clarity. I wasn't dealing with a fling. I wasn't even dealing with an affair in the traditional sense. I was dealing with a rehearsed, double life. A second identity carved carefully into the cracks of my marriage. She was methodical, precise, smiling to my face while scheduling weekend getaways with a man I didn't know existed. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, screenshots, confirmations, files. All of it. I didn't say a word. Just sent them with the subject line. You said you loved stories. By Sunday, I was at my limit. I packed her things. Not angrily. Methodically. The way you pack up an office when you're being laid off. I didn't throw her clothes or smash anything. I folded her sweaters. I even paired her socks. I didn't do it for her. I did it for me. I wanted her to know that the man she left behind, he didn't break. He didn't scream. He sorted her chaos better than she ever sorted me. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called her mother. Now, you need to understand something. Tessa always kept me far away from her family. Said her mother was controlling, her sister judgy, her dad checked out. I only met them twice in 6 years of marriage. But desperate people get brave. I called the number I found in our wedding binder. The one she assumed I forgot. Her mother, Irene, answered. Her voice cracked when I introduced myself. I said, I'm sorry for calling. I just wanted to know if Tessa is safe. She left suddenly and she cut me off. She's not here, Wes. She hasn't called us in over a month. I paused. She told me she was spending the weekend with you all. There was a silence. Then Irene whispered something I'll never forget. She told us you two were separated. Monday came, and for the first time in 3 days, she called again. 10 times in an hour. Then one voicemail. I didn't listen to it. Not yet. Instead, I opened my front door to grab the morning paper and noticed something strange on the porch. Her ring. The same one she left on the coffee table. It was sitting in a small, clear envelope, sealed, with one line written across it in marker. I thought this would be easier. It's not. And that's when I finally realized. She wasn't coming back. I didn't check the voicemail for hours. Not because I was busy. Trust me, I wasn't. I was just tired. Not the kind of tired you fix with a nap, but the kind where your soul drags behind you like a soaked coat. Instead, I sat in the hallway, staring at the ring she left in that envelope. I don't know how long I was there. Long enough for the sun to shift and throw shadows across the floor that looked like broken ribs. She said she'd be back on Monday. It was now 1:13 p.m. on Monday. She hadn't come, and I had done everything I could not to let that bother me. But that envelope on the porch? It wasn't just her ring. It was her permission slip to vanish. A clean exit. A way to leave without explaining anything. Without looking me in the eyes. Without saying the words that would make it all real. I don't know why, but I finally listened to the voicemail. And what I heard wasn't what I expected. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She sounded rushed. Not panicked, rushed. Wes, okay. Look, I know how this looks. But if you go digging into things you don't understand, you're going to make everything worse. Please, just wait until I get back. I swear I'll tell you everything. You deserve the truth. There's more to this than you know. Then it cut off. I replayed it twice. There was something about the way she said, you deserve the truth. It felt like a setup. Not like she was finally coming clean. More like she was prepping me for a version of the story that she could still control. I didn't want her version anymore. I wanted the actual story. And then, at 2:05 p.m., someone knocked on my door. I froze. Not the casual knock of a neighbor. No, this knock had rhythm. Authority. Confidence. I opened the door slowly, expecting, I don't know what. Maybe her. Maybe a friend. But instead, I found a man standing there in a gray suit, holding a folder under one arm and wearing sunglasses like he was trying too hard to be forgettable. Wesley Camden? He asked. I hesitated. Yes. He handed me the folder. I was asked to deliver this in person. From Emerson Porter. My stomach hit the floor. Emerson. The name from the receipts. The man in the background. The guy she was celebrating something big with. The mystery silhouette behind the champagne glass. Who is he? I asked, my voice cracking more than I wanted it to. The man in the suit just shrugged. I'm just the delivery guy. And then he left. I closed the door, locked it, and sat at the kitchen table with the folder in front of me like it was a bomb. I waited 15 minutes before opening it. Inside, a single-page letter. Neatly typed. Signed in blue ink. Wesley, I'm aware you've discovered some parts of the situation involving Tessa. I want you to know that she's not in danger. nor was any harm ever intended to you. I understand how this must look from your angle, but I assure you, nothing was done lightly or without purpose. She'll explain everything when she returns. Please don't interfere further. We ask that you allow this process to complete without escalation. Sincerely, Emerson P. The process? What kind of nonsense was that? Like this was a transaction? A company merger? Was my marriage a business deal to him? Was I the liability? I read the letter again and again. My hands were shaking so hard by the third read, I had to set it down. And that's when I realized something else. This wasn't just an affair. It was something orchestrated, calculated. Like she wasn't just cheating on me. She was transitioning away from me. I checked our shared bank account. $0. Completely emptied. Not by me. Not by any authorized scheduled withdrawal. Gone. I opened our second joint account. Same thing. And our savings? Frozen. A fraud alert had been placed by the primary account holder. Tessa. She didn't just leave me emotionally. She was cutting the parachute while I was still in the air. I called the bank. Waited on hold. Verified myself 3 times. And finally, they told me that my access had been temporarily suspended due to suspicious marital conflict flagged by co-owner authorization. I was locked out. The truth? I don't think she ever planned to come back Monday. I think the ring on the porch was a test. To see if I'd play the victim again. To see if I'd lie down quietly. But I didn't. Because at 4:09 p.m. I called my lawyer. Not to ask questions this time. Just to say 3 words. It's go time. The name, Emerson P., had been echoing in my head ever since I opened that letter. His calm, corporate wording. The signature in blue ink. The fact that he called it a process, like my marriage was part of a company restructuring. But the worst part? That letter wasn't meant to intimidate me. It was meant to reassure me, like I was just collateral damage in something bigger. Like I wasn't even worth lying to anymore. So I stopped playing nice. I didn't wait for Tessa to return. I didn't reply to her voicemails. I didn't bother pretending I was confused. Instead, I did something I should have done months ago. I called my brother. Now, full context, my brother Niles and I hadn't spoken in over a year. Long story short, he warned me about Tessa when we got engaged. Said she was too polished, too charming, too careful. I told him he was being paranoid, and we hadn't spoken much since. But now I needed paranoid. I needed someone who saw what I missed. Niles picked up after 1 ring. You okay? He asked, skipping any greetings. No, I said, my voice brittle. But I'm ready to listen. He met me at a diner 2 hours later. Brought his laptop. No small talk. Just opened his screen and said, I ran a full profile on Emerson Porter. Guess what? He's not just some random guy. He's CEO of Cinerus Strategies. Private consulting firm. Very selective. Very discreet. Usually handles public figures, political marriages, image rehab stuff. I stared at him. Wait, what do you mean, political marriages? Niles didn't flinch. Arranged image relationships. Like when 2 rising stars date for media coverage, or when someone needs a fake spouse for a campaign. Stuff like that. Tessa's name came up in a side project of theirs. My blood ran cold. He turned the laptop around. There she was. Tessa Camden, not listed under her real name, but her maiden name, Tessa Renly. Profiled in a company slideshow titled Staged Relationship Candidates, Tier 1. Niles scrolled. She's been part of this for years, Wes. This isn't new. You were just the quiet, stable option. The base model husband. She had a whole portfolio for it. Background checks, emotional compatibility markers, financial leverage reports. Dude. He looked at me. You were a file. I felt like I'd been punched through the stomach. I wasn't even mad yet. I was numb. Hollow. I wasn't married to a person. I was married to a plan. All the little things made sense now. How she never let me meet her coworkers. How she was always just a little vague about where she came from. The time she snapped at me for tagging her in an old college photo online. Wes, don't post that. It's not flattering. But it wasn't the photo. It was her real last name showing up. She was living under an alias. And I was the placeholder husband she built that life around. That night, I sat at my desk with every document I had, mortgage records, tax returns, insurance policies, everything tied to both our names. And suddenly, it was all toxic, not just legally, emotionally. Because if what Niles found was true, this wasn't just infidelity. This was engineering. She didn't fall out of love. She fell out of need. And that's why she left her ring on the table. That's why she told her family we were separated before we even were. That's why Emerson's letter felt so composed, like this wasn't the first time they'd done this to someone. But here's where they underestimated me. They thought I'd disappear quietly. They thought I'd drown in self-pity. They thought I'd never look under the rug, never ask the hard questions, never make noise. They forgot I have nothing left to protect. So I wrote back. I drafted my own letter. No lawyer, just me. To Emerson and all parties involved, consider this notice that you've made a serious error in judgment. You left loose ends. You underestimated how far someone will go when they have nothing left to lose. I won't be waiting for explanations. I'll be creating consequences. Regards, Wesley Camden. I sent it directly to the Cinerus Strategies office. Printed copy. Overnight delivery. Signature required. And then, at 11:53 p.m., my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Voicemail. It was her. Wes, I know what you found. Please don't do this. You don't understand. You'll ruin things for both of us. Just stop. I'm coming back tomorrow. Please, just wait for me. I'll tell you everything. But the thing is, I wasn't waiting anymore. I was already 3 steps ahead. By sunrise, I had already canceled every joint account. The wedding registry we still had open for God knows what. Deleted. Streaming accounts? Changed every password. Her name was pulled from my insurance. Her emergency contact status was revoked. I even submitted a request to my HR department to remove her from my employment benefits. It wasn't about revenge. It was about control. I needed to feel like something still belonged to me. Because clearly, our life together never had. What kept looping in my head, though, was her last message. I'm coming back tomorrow. Please, just wait for me. It was the tone. Not fear. Not sorrow. It was calculation. Like she was already scripting how I'd react, how I'd forgive her. Like she assumed she could explain her way out of being caught running a relationship like a business merger. I wasn't waiting to be explained to anymore. I was taking notes. That day, I took off work and drove to the address listed on Emerson's letterhead. It wasn't a high-rise office like I imagined. It was a 3-story brick building downtown, squeezed between a dry cleaner and a vitamin shop. It didn't even have their company name on the door. Inside was a generic-looking lobby with minimalist furniture, no receptionist, and a touchscreen kiosk asking me to sign in. I didn't. Instead, I waited, sat on the leather bench near the window, and acted like I belonged. Within 10 minutes, a man in a navy sweater and slacks came through the inner door, talking on his phone. I recognized him from one of the background reflections in Tessa's photos. I followed him. Yes, I know how that sounds. But I wasn't stalking. I was researching. He walked 2 blocks and entered a parking garage. That's when I snapped a picture from behind, just enough for facial recognition software to work with. Later, Niles ran the image through his system. That man's name wasn't Emerson Porter. It was Julian Edens, a former contract investigator for a dissolved think tank based out of D.C. Suspended 3 years ago after a scandal involving covert manipulation of personal relationships between political donors and media figures. What in the actual hell had I married into? Tessa wasn't just part of some personal affair consultancy. She was a plant, or a tool, or whatever term people like Julian used for people that they could mold and move around like chess pieces. And I was the pawn. But something still didn't add up. Why me? I wasn't a politician. I wasn't rich. I wasn't famous. I was a middle-salary project manager with a small social circle and a golden retriever named Newton. Then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. 3 years ago, I testified in a corporate case. I had worked for a software firm where a senior partner was involved in embezzlement. I didn't want to get involved, but I was subpoenaed. I gave calm, boring testimony about invoice logs. That partner? He went down. The firm collapsed. His associates lost millions. And one of those associates had ties to the same network of shell companies connected to Cinerus Strategies. Suddenly, I wasn't just a placeholder husband. I was a target with a clean face. The type of guy no one would suspect, until someone needed to take a shot without pulling a trigger. I wasn't married for love. I was married to be neutralized. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the garage, in my car, just thinking, staring at the walls, the ceiling, the rearview mirror, listening to the quiet sound of Newton snoring in the back seat, because I couldn't even leave him alone in the house anymore. I didn't trust silence. Around midnight, I opened my laptop and drafted a public disclosure. Nothing dramatic. No accusations. Just a simple, carefully worded document outlining what I had uncovered, minus the names. A breadcrumb trail. I sent it to 2 journalists anonymously. One tech, one political, both known for following shadowy trails no one else would touch. And then I took the final step. I prepared a burner phone, wrote a single sentence in a note file, and scheduled it for delayed release to a secure cloud folder, with instructions to forward the entire file to every contact in my and Tessa's joint address book if I didn't disable it manually in 72 hours. If anything happens to me, here's why. You want to run a marriage like a game? Fine. But I don't play checkers anymore. At 7:41 the next morning, I heard the front door unlock. She was back. Tessa stepped into the living room like nothing happened. No suitcase, no coat, just her phone in one hand and a weak smile on her face. I was hoping we could talk, she said softly. I stared at her for a long time, not with anger, with clarity. And then I said, sure, let's talk. But you go first. Because I wanted to hear her lie with her whole chest one more time. She walked in like it was a normal Tuesday morning. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, wearing the hoodie I bought her last Christmas, the one with the embroidered initials, T+W. The same hoodie she once said felt like home. Now it looked like a disguise. Tessa placed her phone on the counter slowly, as if she knew I might be watching her every move. She didn't reach for me. She didn't cry. She looked like a woman ready to lead a presentation, not confess a betrayal. I know you found things, she said quietly. I didn't respond. She nodded, like she had rehearsed that too. Then she sat down across from me at the kitchen table. The same table where we used to plan vacations, talk about grocery lists, laugh about nothing. Now, we were sitting across from each other like opponents in a negotiation. She folded her hands. Before you say anything, please let me talk. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, giving her nothing. She took a deep breath. What you found, yes. Some of it is true. Some of it is more complicated than you think. I was approached 6 years ago by people who work in relationship modeling. It's not illegal. It's not what it sounds like. I was selected because of my psychological profile, my background, and yes, my adaptability. And yes, they helped me connect with someone stable, someone reliable. She couldn't even say my name. Just someone. I didn't move. She kept going. I never meant to hurt you. I never planned for it to go on this long. But the longer we stayed married, the more real it started to feel. I fell in love with the stability, the safety, with you. That was the first time she looked at me directly. But I didn't flinch. Because I could already tell, the words weren't for me. They were for herself. A self-soothing script written by someone who needed to believe her own story. She went on. Emerson isn't what you think. Neither is the company. There are reasons I had to separate our finances. It wasn't to steal from you. It was to protect you. That line made me laugh out loud. A bitter, involuntary sound that made her blink. Protect me from what? I asked. And then she said the one thing I didn't expect. You were never supposed to find out. Her voice cracked. And there it was. The only honest sentence she'd said since walking through the door. I stood up, walked to the window, and stared outside at our quiet street. Trash bins lining the curb. A dog barking 2 houses down. The same normal world I lived in yesterday, now painted in different colors. Behind me, she kept talking. There are contracts in place. Legal documents. NDAs. If this leaks, it won't just ruin my life, Wes. It could ruin yours too. Your name is on paperwork. You've signed things without knowing it. Please stop before you get caught in something you can't undo. I turned around slowly. You forged my name? She didn't say yes. She just looked down. And in that silence, I realized how deep it went. She hadn't just lied to me. She hadn't just faked the marriage. She'd weaponized it. Used my signature. My stability. My identity. I wasn't her husband. I was her platform. Do you remember the cabin trip 2 years ago? I asked suddenly. She nodded, confused. Do you remember what we talked about on the second night? I don't know, she stammered. We were drinking. We talked about adopting, I said. We were watching a documentary about foster care, and you said you wanted to be a mom, even if it wasn't biological. You cried. You held my hand and said I'd be a good father. She said nothing. I stayed up that night, I continued. I started researching adoption agencies. I called 2 of them the next week. I didn't tell you, because I wanted it to be a surprise. I thought I'd found my forever person. Tessa lowered her head into her hands. I lied to my family for you. I said, my voice getting colder. I defended you to everyone who doubted us. I lost my brother for 2 years. And you? You were filing paperwork with fake names and drinking champagne with your handler? She looked up. Wes, please, I can fix this. We can fix this. No, I said. You can't fix something you never built. I walked to the hall closet, opened the top shelf, and pulled out a thin black binder she had probably forgotten about. I dropped it on the table in front of her. What's this? Your real file? I said. She opened it. Inside were printouts, screenshots, her old identity profiles, bank logs, digital forensics, and the letter from Emerson. The last page was my own statement. I watched her face drain. I made copies, I said calmly. 3 of them. One's already in the hands of a journalist. One is with my lawyer. And one is scheduled for release if anything happens to me. She stared at me, mouth slightly open, the way someone stares at a train coming toward them far too fast. I don't want revenge, I said. I want my name off everything. I want legal separation. I want protection. And I want to disappear from whatever twisted program you signed up for. Tessa opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because for the first time, she understood. I wasn't bluffing. Wait here, she said suddenly. Don't do anything. Please. I need to make a call. Just give me 10 minutes. She rushed out the door. Didn't take her phone. Didn't say goodbye. Just vanished. Again. But this time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt armed. She didn't come back. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then an hour. I didn't call. I didn't go after her. I sat in the living room in complete silence. Newton curled at my feet, the binder still on the table, her coffee mug from 3 days ago untouched by the sink. Something told me this wasn't over, not even close. At 4:38 p.m., a black sedan I didn't recognize pulled up in front of the house. Not a rideshare. No license plate on the front. No commercial markings. I stood up, but didn't go to the window. I didn't want them to know I saw. 2 men stepped out. Dark gray suits. Not government, but dressed like they wanted you to think they were government. One of them held a thin briefcase. The other scanned the house like he was counting exits. Then they approached my door. They didn't knock like Tessa. Not even like Emerson's guy. They knocked like they owned the property and were checking to see who was squatting inside. I didn't open immediately. I took my time. Let the silence stretch. Then I cracked the door just 2 inches. Can I help you? I asked. The taller one didn't introduce himself. He just nodded slightly and said, Mr. Camden, we'd appreciate 5 minutes of your time. In private. Then you should have called first, I said. He didn't smile. I believe your wife called us. That got my attention. I opened the door, just wide enough to step outside, and close it behind me. No recordings, the second man said. No need for a lawyer right now. This is just a courtesy visit. Funny, I replied. I didn't realize black cars and mystery suits were courteous now. The taller one took a small breath, then got right to the point. You've obtained sensitive information, some of which you may not fully understand. That information is linked to real people, powerful people, and some of it is less accurate than you believe. Accurate enough for 3 journalists to verify it. I said. He tilted his head. Has anything been published yet? I didn't answer. The other man stepped forward. His voice was lower, more deliberate. You're not in danger, Mr. Camden. Not unless you create danger. What your wife was involved in was bigger than marriage. And frankly, you were never supposed to get this close. So I've heard, I said. From everyone except her. The first man looked at me again. That's because she chose not to lie to you. Now that made me flinch. Because for the first time since this started, someone else said something that didn't match the narrative I had built. She's not the enemy, Mr. Camden, he continued. She was pulled in, groomed, coerced. She wasn't meant to fall for you. But she did. The rest was survival. I swallowed. You want to clear her name, then give me the truth. On record. He shook his head. No records. No trails. But if you walk away from this now, we'll make sure your name never appears in anything related to the project. You'll have a clean break. And so will she. I stepped back, my heart pounding. And if I don't? Neither of them answered. But the silence was louder than anything they could have said. They left without shaking hands. The car pulled away slowly, almost casually. Like they were sure I'd do the smart thing. Like they thought they'd said enough to scare me into submission. But I wasn't scared. I was furious. Because in their attempt to protect her, they finally gave me something I hadn't had this whole time. Leverage. That night, I did something impulsive. I drove 2 hours to a small town I knew Tessa had visited once, back when she said she was helping a friend recover from surgery. I had remembered the name of the town because it was the only time she ever sent me a postcard. A little print with a lighthouse and a one-line message. Sometimes storms are just part of the view. It didn't mean anything back then, but now, it felt like a code. I found the Airbnb she used from my earlier digging and parked across the street for over an hour. I didn't know what I expected, to catch her meeting someone, to see Emerson himself, but I didn't see her. I saw a woman, tall, blonde, dressed in the exact same hoodie she wore this morning, unlock the side gate and go into the guest house. But when I got closer, I realized it wasn't her. It was someone who looked almost like her. Same height, same mannerisms, different face. My stomach dropped. They weren't just using people. They were replacing them, training them, mimicking them, copying their lives like some psychological blueprint. Tessa wasn't the first, and she wouldn't be the last. I drove home in silence, windows down, head spinning. The truth was worse than betrayal. It was manufactured betrayal by design. And I wasn't sure anymore if she came back to confess or if she came back to control the damage. By morning, I made my decision. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want answers in hushed voices or files in briefcases or cryptic lines like, "You were never supposed to know." I didn't want to be dragged through more webs, more schemes, more people trying to weaponize my peace. I wanted out. And this time, for the first time in months, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I got up, brewed a cup of coffee, and fed Newton, who, somehow, had stayed calm through it all like he knew his job was to simply exist beside me, no questions asked. I wrote a short email to my lawyer. I'm ready to finalize everything. Prioritize the clean exit, not the courtroom war. No more fighting ghosts. Then I packed a small suitcase. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, my charger, my journal, Newton's leash. And before I walked out, I placed a single envelope on the kitchen table, right next to the binder of evidence that started it all. The note inside wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It simply said, "You said I deserved the truth. I decided I deserved better. Goodbye, for real this time." Wes. I drove north. No destination at first, just away. Through empty back roads and lake towns and forgotten intersections. Newton's head out the window, my playlist on shuffle, the sun breaking through October clouds like it had been waiting for me to stop looking backward. By the 3rd day, I found a place that felt quiet enough to matter. An old rental cabin near the edge of a forest preserve, run by an older couple named Jean and Donna, who didn't ask why I was alone, or why I paid for a full week in cash, or why I looked like I hadn't slept in days. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. That was the best part. A week passed. Then 2. The calls stopped. The voicemails dried up. The world didn't implode. No shadowy men came knocking. No emails from Tessa. No letters from Emerson. Just peace. One morning, I opened my laptop and saw that the journalist I had anonymously contacted had published a story, not mine, but something eerily close, about an exposed image management firm dissolving due to internal whistleblowers, quiet settlements, and off-the-record testimony. I didn't need credit. I didn't need headlines. Just knowing I wasn't crazy, that was enough. By the end of the month, I signed the divorce papers. Tessa never contested them. She didn't even add a note. It was like she knew this wasn't a negotiation anymore. I wasn't the same man she could play chess with in the dark. I was done being her pawn. I sold the house, moved everything I truly needed into a small trailer, got a remote consulting job, took Newton on hikes every morning. And one day, in late November, I received a letter from Irene, Tessa's mom. A real, handwritten letter. "I know everything now. I'm sorry for what she did to you. But I'm grateful you still got out before it took all of you. I always thought you were the best part of her story. I hope you become the best part of your own." I cried when I read it. And then I laughed. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't someone's story. I was writing my own. People think closure comes from confrontation, from final words, from apologies, from the big dramatic scenes you see in movies. But I learned something better. Closure comes when you stop chasing broken things, when you protect your own peace, when you choose to begin again. And sometimes that beginning, it's just a man, a dog, a quiet road, and the decision not to go back. Ever.